Okay, guys, so now we'll get started with our calculator project and we'll try to learn different concepts, basic concepts of Rust using this project. Remember, this is a very practical oriented course and we'll learn everything by coding it instead of reading it. Okay, so just like we created our Hello World project in the last video, let's create a project here called calculator. So we have our calculator folder here. We'll open it in the VS Code. Okay, so we'll build a very basic calculator here. This calculator will add, subtract, multiply, and divide two numbers, and we'll try to learn the some data types as well as the mutability concept here in this project. I highly recommend that you watch this video in parts, but I will make this tutorial in one video so that if you have if you want you can complete this project in one video in one go, or if you do not have that approach to learning, you can make it in parts so that it is easier for you to learn and grasp the concepts. So I'll just first thing we'll learn here is the comments, and I'll mention here that so this is the first thing you learn, that is the comments. You mention the comment by forward slash, double forward slash, and whatever you mention in the comments, it does not get compiled, it is not treated as code, and it is simply ignored by the compiler. Okay, so let's get started with the calculator. First of all, we want to have a welcome message so that we know what the project is about. So we'll type here a welcome message. Okay, after we have our um, welcome message, we want to have a menu in which we ask the user what operation does he wants to perform. So uh, we'll give a message here. Please choose one of the following operation to perform, and we have subtraction. We have third as multiplication, and we have division. Okay, after we mention this, complete this menu, let's save it, open the terminal, and we'll run cargo run command. It will compile, and you can see here we have our welcome message, we have our menu here. So what we need to do next is um, we need to get the input from the user. So if you're familiar with Java language, then you might be familiar with the concept of libraries. But if you have not programming language background, if you have not programmed any other language, library is something is kind of a package we provide you with different functionalities you want to perform. You don't have to code those functionalities; they are already provided you so that you can get started with them. So every language has its standard library set of libraries, and there are some additional libraries as well which anyone can use. Same is the case with Rust. Rust has its standard library. In order to import a library in Rust, we use the keyword use, and then we'll type std dot io. Now std is the standard library, and io is the part of the library which deal with the input output operations of the library. So before we need to before we can take the input from the user, obviously that input will have to be saved in some variable. So we need to first create that variable in which the input value will be saved. So this brings to our first concept, variable declaration and initialization. So how do you declare a variable in Rust is uh, simply by start using with the let command. Let, then the variable name will enter input, or let's give it a better name, choice. Okay, then what we can do here, there are two ways forward from here. First thing is that we give it equal, and we give it the we initialize it. It's a better way to express it. We initialize it with some value. For, let's say, we give it 1. So now we have not mentioned any type of the choice, which type, what is the type of the choice variable. So what it will do, it will automatically infer its type from its initialization. So when we do not explicitly give a type to the variable, we have to initialize it. It's must in Rust. But if we don't want to initialize a number, we can simply give it uh, its type. And how do we give it that a variable its type is by giving the colon uh, character, and then we give its type. So there are different types in the Rust. Let's say we give it i32. Now if you want to learn more about what are the data types in Rust, uh, you can see here it's the Rust book. Uh, it's a very good resource to learn about Rust and its other functionalities. You can explore this whole book. It's provided by the Rust itself, so it's very authentic and it's very clear. So if you go to the data type section, you get all the data type section as here. It's U32. These are the values of the integer types, I8, I8, I16, and all that. If you are familiar with the if you have any background of programming, you might be familiar with signed and unsigned concepts. But if you're not, I'll just, it's just that in signed variables, the value can be both plus and negative, and in unsigned variables, the value can be only positive. That's a very simple way to explain it. Then we have our string types. We have floating types. That's F62, F32, again, all that stuff. And we have our character type. We are using a character type. We have compound tuple types. As you can see here, we have tuples. We have array type. We use all these types one by one in this or in the other coming projects. So you don't need to worry about these data types. We'll just get started with these integer types in this project. Okay, so let's say we want this to be i32. Okay, we have now declared our what variable in which we want to store the result. Now let's call the function which asks for the input from the user. So we'll use the std io library. We can call it io, and then we'll std in. This will get the input type dot read line. So what this will do is that it will read the line here. Here we can see the error here. Let's say this is a uh, variable name and this is type. So the read line expects a variable which is of type string and has modifier mut in with it. So they, here comes another concept in Rust, that is mutability. So what mutability means, that in Rust there are two types of variable. One is mutable and the other is immutable. The mutable variable value can be changed later on after initialization or at any time, while immutable variables once declared, once initialized, cannot be reassigned to another value. The choice variable which we have declared here is immutable because we have not given it the modifier mut once. So hence once it is initialized with a value, it cannot be changed later on. But if we want to later on change it, we'll give it a mut value. Okay, so another thing which we get to see from the readline function is that the readline function needs a string value. The choice value here is I32, but the readline wants a string value, so we'll simply change its value to string. And the this string data type is not native to the Rust, so we can declare it like this: string and new, and we'll then give this choice here, and we will mention the and mut type with the choice. So what now it will do is that the choice, the whatever whatever user values is given, will be saved in this choice variable. So you can see here we are getting a yellow line under this code, and this is a warning. What warning we are given? That unused std result dot result, that must be used. Okay, now let's get, if we point our mouse on the readline function, we see that the readline function returns us a result. It does not return us a value, it does not return us a boolean, it returns us a result. So we have another concept here which is called result. So what results are, if you are familiar with Node.js, then you can compare result with with promises. So we need to solve those promises in order to get the values contained in those promises. Or if you are familiar with Dart, in Dart it is called as future. So basically what it returns is not a value, it returns as a result, and we have to extract a value from that result. So how can we extract the value from the result? Is that there are two ways to do it. One is we can simply call unwrap function. It will, as the name suggests, it will unwrap the result and give us the value back. Or there's another way to do this as well, that is dot expect. Now what expect will do is that it will throw us error message, and we can mention any message here. Let's say we can say that unable to read the input. So we have another concept here, that is error handling. So how do you handle an error? One way is to simply unwrap it, and one is to use the expect function. The difference between the expect and unwrap is that the unwrap function will, what you can say, will interrupt your execution of your program. It will simply interrupt and your program will cease to continue. But what expect does, that it gracefully shuts down the program, and it is not stopped in a very interrupted way, and we get a very informative feedback from the system, that where does the issue exists, and the program continues from that point. It's not stopped immediately. So that's the difference between the expect and the unwrap function. You can use both, but it is recommended that you use the expect function for a graceful and a very stable code base. So we have in what we have done till now is that we have taken the input from the user. Let's simply give it a line and print uh, what the user input again, so that we know if it has been passed or read by the program correctly or not. So we'll give you have entered. Oops, you have entered twice. So here comes another thing which you can notice here is that placeholder. In order to print a variable inside the print statement, you use these curly brackets, and then you uh, mention the variable which you want to print, so that it is printed inside the print ln statement. So we'll save this program for now, and we will run cargo run command. It will compile. It will ask us for input. As you can see here, it's waiting for our input. Let's say we enter 1, press enter, and it gives us you have entered 1. So it means that up until now we have programmed our code correctly. So what we now need to do is that we need to let's suppose we need to enter two numbers on which we can perform uh, the operation. So again, we'll we'll use the same mechanism. We'll use the same readline function to get the input from the user. So what we can do is that either we can redeclare this here as well. It will it is showing us an warning here that variable does not need to be mutable, because we have not yet modified the variable from here onwards. But once we modify it, the warning will go away. So we'll copy this again. We'll copy this. Let's copy this all, and let's print a statement here. Please enter the first number, colon, and let's copy that again, and give it a second number. Okay, we'll save this. Now let's run it. Let's see if it throws any error or not. We'll choose 1. We'll enter the first number, let's say 32. We'll enter the second number, 45. So right now what it has done is that it is taking our number correctly, and what we now need to do is to perform the operations on this number. But before performing the operations, there is another thing which we need to do. You see here, this choice is a string type, but in order to perform mathematical operations on any variable, it needs to be in the integer or float type, right? So we need to parse the value of the value entered by the user into a integer or float type. So what we can do is that we can mention we can let's declare a variable here. Let math first number. Okay, let's give it a data type I32. And how do we pass it? Is that we pass it by like this: choice, which you want to parse, dot parse function. Now either we can simply unwrap it here, and it will parse the choice into I32. How does it know that which data type to convert it into? Is either from here, which because we have explicitly given its data type, or if we do not provide its data type here, we can simply parse and I32, and so the error goes away, and it parses it into I32. You can give I32 here as well. It's not the problem. So we copy this, we will enter it here. Let's give it a second number. We'll save it, and let's give a print statement here to check whether our numbers have been parsed correctly or not. Let's run it again. I'm expecting it to throw an error, and let's see where does that error come from. Let's enter 1 here and enter first number 12, and it is throwing us an error that it is an invalid digit. The reason is that when we are the line, as you can see, it is throwing us an error at line number 25, and it is occurring here. So what we need to do is, the error is that when we have we enter our value, it is not trimmed value. It has characters at the end and at the start, because it is ultimately it is in buffer. So what we can do is that we can trim it, this one and this will remove all the unentered characters from start and the beginning of our value. So let's save it and run it again. We have 1 and 15. So we have entered 12 and 15, and that's it means that our numbers are parsed correctly. So it means that we have entered our value, parsed it correctly. Now what we need to do is to actually perform the operations on this on these two numbers. So the next concept we will learn here is the flow control. By flow control, we mean if and else and switch statement, which you might be familiar with through other programming languages. So right now what we have done is that we have overwritten our value of choice. So if we want to control the flow, we want to apply a check on what the user has entered, we need to store the choice in another variable so that we can uh, what we can say, we can check it later on. So let's rename. I will press Ctrl H. I will rename all choice by input, so that whatever the user inputs get stored in the input value. And right here, where we are taking the choice of the value, we can let uh, choice, we'll give I8, because it will not be a big number. It will be 1 2 3 4, so we do not need to give it like something like I32 or whatever. And we can give it input dot trim dot parse and dot unwrap. So now we have a choice as an I8 value. So let's say if choice is equal to 1, we will perform addition. Else if choice is equal to 2, we perform multiplication. Else if choice is equal to 3, we perform we will perform multiplication here. In choice 2, we perform subtraction. Else if choice is equal to 4, division. And If anything else besides these four numbers is entered, we'll give it print ln, and please enter a number from 1 to 4. So we'll simply uh, let's declare a variable here dot which we call let result. It will be I32, and let's initialize it to 0. If choice is 1, we'll obviously we will add here, add. So we'll get result is equal to first number plus second number. Okay. The error we get here is that cannot assign twice to immutable variable result, because we have not declared the result as immutable, so we need to declare it mutable. So as you can see, the error goes away now. Similarly, we'll subtract here, subtract, and minus, we will multiply here, and we will multiply, divide here, divide, and after we have uh, performed our operation, we can print ln your result is result. Okay, let's save it, run it. I want to perform, let's say, subtraction. First number will be 45, second number will be 21, and your result is 24. Oops, I see here. Please enter the second number, 45. Oops, I made a mistake here. You have entered this one. Okay, so we see here uh, we have made a calculator in a very basic sense, but this is just a basic calculator. We have learned about the very basic data variable data variable types. Now let's test this application in division, and I want to show you guys something. Let's go to division. I want first number to be, let's say, 30. I want second number to be 7, and the answer is 4. So as we know that the 30 divided by 7 is not 4, it is in decimal, because it is in decimal, but as I type and u type variable are integer, so our result will always be integer. We have declared the result that type to be I32, so this only, it cannot contain float variable, it will contain uh, integer variable. So let's change this to F32. Let's see what happens now. Now, as you can see here, it's giving us the error. It is expecting F32, but it is getting an integer which is 0. Again, the first number and second number are I32, but the result is F32, so we cannot store I32 into an F32. Same is the error here. So if what we can do here is that, so we are getting error here, so in order to pass it as float, we can write as F32 and as F32. So you see now our error goes away. We can also write as F32. Let's copy paste, and here, here. So now our error goes away. Let's write again for division 37, and now our answer is in decimal. It will also work again similarly with other operations as well. We'll give it 7 and your answer is 8. Now we can see here that it is not displaying any decimals here because it is a complete number, so it doesn't display any decimal here. So this is a very basic calculator which we have compiled till now. It was a very long video, but I wanted to give you a complete picture of these concepts. In the next video, we'll modify this calculator to learn some other data types in the Rust, which will include structs and nums. We will also use switch statements in the next video, as well as we'll create some new function and we'll see return types and we'll see how that all gels together. So see you guys in the next video.